My name is Sandy Fonzo. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. My family and I are victims of criminal court corruption.
We're running now, and this is all edited, so we can change anything. And if you don't like something you say, just say, "Oh, I don't like that." And
Okay.
if I ask you a question you don't want to answer, just don't answer.
Okay.
Just say, "I don't want to answer it." As I said earlier, I thank you so much for coming. You, to me, are one of the most important people I could possibly talk to.
I thank you for doing this. I mean, the more we could get the awareness, you know, it's the only way change could ever take place.
And I will sit and make notes, and sometimes it takes me a while to write them down because I'm not that fast a writer. I'm not sure when I first heard about the story, but I started watching everything, and I posted some things on my website, and I just can't imagine it being as brazen as they were. I don't know how they got away with it for that long.
The judicial conduct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had they been taken before that, and they didn't find anything, they just dismissed people's actions?
It was a dead end every single, they just had the power in this area that they were just untouchable. There was nobody. I mean, our own DA did absolutely nothing. Our president, I'm sorry, I'm still like just so shaken up. The public defenders, Al Flora, he did absolutely nothing. I mean, he was the head of the juvenile, department, saw that all the people that were being funneled through, and without counsel. I mean, he's the one that tried or defended Chivarella. Our president. It's just, there's so many so many levels of the corruption and how all this came about, and there's just so many different avenues that it takes.
It's hard for me to imagine it could have been a secret to anybody at the courthouse.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, I went to the judicial, forums of the new judges, when their debates, and they were all lawyers that were there then, and every one of them said everybody knew there's no way they'd be liars. They stood up and said we'd be liars if we didn't know. But for one of them to come forward, and if whatever information they gave, if there was any kind of shadow of doubt with anything, there goes their law license and they're done. And, nobody would stand up and do anything. I mean, the lawyers, that we contacted pretty much would tell you that Judge Chivarella does what he wants to do. You could give me all the money in the world, it's not going to make a difference. We would go into that courtroom, and media wasn't allowed in there because it was juvenile. He just did whatever he wanted to do. And I mean,
Have you become aware that it's pretty much that way with all judges?
Yeah, they all think they're God, and they do what they, yeah.
And
And they have immunity. That's his way out of the state charges. They actually have immunity, which is something that was hundreds of years ago, when the world was a different place, that was put in to protect them from real criminal, not that they could go and do absolutely anything that they want to do and that they can never be touched. I mean, just so much needs to be changed, but there were no state charges because of that immunity clause.
all right, have the families brought a civil action?
Yeah.
Everybody's a group or separately?
No, it's all pretty much a group, yeah.
Okay. And has immunity been raised in that as a defense, I assume?
Well, it was just the federal, you know what I mean? This is a federal civil. So there, it was Judge Chivarella, Judge Conahan, Powell, Miracle, the owners of the facility. All of Luzerne County has already been freed of any kind of charges.
Is
It's just,
the action for civil RICO?
Yes.
See, I haven't found a case that says that a judge has immunity for civil RICO. What they do is they just end up trying to dismiss them before they would ever have to say that. Because since a judge doesn't have immunity from criminal acts, and since civil RICO is simply proving criminal acts, I don't know how they can take the position the judge is immune from that.
Yeah, just the civil.
But it's, again, you got a judge who's probably not honest making the decision.
Right, and I mean, Chivarella he's indigent. He's been proven indigent now. So, I mean, he has an appeal, and our chief public defender, again, is going to, defend him again. But we'll never see anything from him. And I don't want money from any of them. I don't want a thing from any of them. They took everything. They ruined everything. It means absolutely nothing to me.
How many people have contacted you? Is it bazillions?
Yeah, I mean, I just spoke to someone, did an interview last night. There's always something. There's always, an avenue. Somebody will be doing some kind of research and found it, and So, I mean, it's good. It seems like one thing leads to another, and hopefully it just keeps spilling forward to just bring the awareness, and hope that at some point it gets into the right hands, that real change can take place. I mean, for-profit incarceration, boot camps, immigration, juveniles, adult system, it's our country, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, business, so I can't ever imagine. I mean, it's my dream, but I can't ever imagine that ending. But that was the whole bottom line. If for-profit incarceration wasn't legal, that was the whole reason all this was set up, and the power and the greed and the money these judges were able to make, because that is legal. That's how it all began.
Well, it's just like family court. Some law that was signed by Bill Clinton, probably with good intention, pays the states a bounty when they adopt a child out. Doesn't pay them anything if they get them back together with their family. And if it's handicapped or special needs, they get an extra $4,000 bonus. So, it's like with the guardianship. It's human trafficking. So it just takes, the pay for incarceration, private prison business is just in a slightly different vein. It's the guardianship abuse issue. In a slightly different vein, it's the
same thing. It's just the money.
Or if you take just a civil case like mine, that judge was either just out and out bribed, or money or deals that changed hands involving the law firm on the other side. Big company and big law firm able to grease the skids. So it's almost all ends up being money oriented that causes the dishonesty.
Yep.
Pennsylvania made some changes. Do you feel that they did much? Were you pleased with what they did?
I mean, there is oversight now, so hopefully, here, I mean, kids cannot be shackled and cuffed any longer. They all have to have counsel. These judges, whatever sentences they set, there has to be, they have to explain the reason and what this is going to benefit. And there's someone that will look, over him and oversight. So yeah, there are, changes that have happened that'll, make sure that there's oversight, and that, exactly right here, that this can't happen again. But like I said, the for-profit incarceration, unless that could change, this kind of tragedy could just happen anywhere, all over the place, in every different, juveniles, and like I said, immigration, boot camps, the adult system. I mean, out west, you just hear about facility after facility going up with immigration, and they're just packing these places, and it's just devastating. It's just imaginable. Like, you still just cannot believe it. In Pennsylvania, they're still trying to figure out if they want to privatize alcohol. You know, it's still state controlled. But our children's, you know, our children, they'll, you know, you could privately own a facility and lock them up and make money off of it. But they still don't know if they want to do it with alcohol yet.
What's the status of the facility where your son was? Is it still here?
Closed down
It's
now.
closed.
It's closed down, yeah.
Just sitting there?
Yeah, well, one of the owners is in prison for 18 months. That was Robert Powell. And the other one is his father's a Chief Supreme Court Justice, so you never heard his name. Gregory Zappala, his name was just, never heard nothing. He never saw anything. He was all of a sudden not a partner as soon as everything came out and about, and has never been touched, and there's nothing.
What was his name again?
Gregory Zappala.
Have you gotten very close to other families who were involved in this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been with the Juvenile Law Center out in Philadelphia, who are the ones that have, you know, exposed this and have been fighting it for all these years, and took it to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and were, you know, it was all thrown out, and then took it again. I mean, they're the ones that kept going. But so there was about 300 of us that were with that juvenile detention or juvenile center for since the beginning, you know. So yeah, I mean, we have our meetings, and we've gotten together. Before Chivarella was sentenced, I had kind of like a support group for a lot of us, and we would meet and we would just get together just to talk. And so yeah, and it's all really the same story. I mean, the kids have never been helped, you know, ones that have, either they're still incarcerated somewhere, they've never gotten to finish school. There's been, to my knowledge, as of now, 7 suicides. And I mean, we, you know, now believe that the kids were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, but there was no, you know, he would take them, rip them from their homes, throw them in these facilities. My son would never would speak about what went on in the facilities. I have no idea how bad it was, but I have heard stories from some of the other kids. And then just take them and throw them back out. And I mean, their names were destroyed. You know, they had these names that they were these bad kids that, you know, they couldn't go back to their schools. You know, just what it did to them, to their, you know, my son was really looked up to by, you know, kids and by you know, older people. He was a great character. He had, you know, he was just, and he was so ashamed, you know, when his name got drugged through this whole thing. You know, he didn't want to hear anything about it. One of the last things he said to me is, "Mom, nothing will ever happen. He won't go to jail," you know. And he wasn't here to see him go, but he knows. But he knew that nothing would ever become of it. They were just so beaten down and just destroyed.
So they didn't reverse the findings on the kids that were incarcerated?
Yeah, they did. They expunged all of their charges, and they had to, and that was a big thing because, you know, there were some kids that did have charges that, you know, there were victims, and, you know, and because they were doing this with one, saying this judge was corrupt and was, you know, on basis of making money, trying them and sentencing these kids, you couldn't expunge the record of one and not all of them, so they were just completely all expunged. But still to this day, there's kids that have tried to get into the service and have not, because it still somehow comes up. You know, it's not totally expunged because it's still following them around. You know, trying to just get an apartment, and you know, they look up the name and see the charges that they had, and so it just follows them. It never, you know, lets them go.
Before this happened to your family, what were your views about government, the courts? What was
So I've never ever dealt with anything, you know. There was never anything that I ever had to deal with, but I always, you know, never in ever would I imagine, you know, that, you know, when we would grow up, you know, your friend's family, he was a cop, so the cop would come over and talk to kids, give them a little bit of a scare. It was like community was community, you know. It was, everybody looked out, especially for the kids. And you know, when we went in front of that judge, which we never should have gone in front of the judge, it should have been a magistrate. But like I said, they saw to it that anything was funneled in front of this judge. They were all sent in front of him for any charges. And we stood there, and when he, you know, automatically sentenced my son, you're going to this to the juvenile detention center. You're going to sit there and just think about what you've done. You know, I thought to myself right away, well, you know, that's a little bit harsh, because I'm thinking a community service program, some kind of an after school, like, you know, why are you going to take him out of school to throw him in this detention center? So I thought it was harsh, but then, you know, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, these are the professionals. They have my child's best interest at heart. I would never imagine that any other way, that anybody would, you know, but I was wrong. I was just naive. You know, we didn't know. And, you know, like I said, right away, you knew something was wrong, there was something going on, something wasn't right. The minute he would do this, I mean, there was kids standing in a line, 6 of them in a row, and cuffed and shackled, and just, you know, within a minute's time, just all out the door. And the next group would come in, you know. It was like an assembly line. And, you know, you're taking your child, and you're going to be respectable, and you're going to yes sir to this judge, and look at him, and you tell him, and you know, yes sir, and all this, you know, we teach our kids. And I remember one mother said, you know, the right thing's going to be done. We're going to go there, and you know, he's going to do what's best for our child. You go up there, you show him respect, yes sir, and tell him, you know, what you've done and all that. And she said, by all reality, we were leading her. They were like lambs being led to slaughter by us, by our, you know. My son, when they shackled and cuffed him, and he turned around, and like the look on his face, like, you know, what's going on here? And I yelled out, and I was told that I'd be taken out of there for an outburst. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You couldn't, you know, make a peep in in there. And you know, the look is just so hopeless, like your own mother, you know, you can't even help. He was in that detention center, and 17 years old. So all of a sudden I get a call, and this is right here in Pittston. It's, you know, 15 minutes from here. I get a call the next day. It's my son. He's out in Shamokin at this boot camp. 10 o'clock the night before, somebody drove him he told me, and it was pouring that night, pouring and speeding, drove him to this facility because they needed to fill his bed in that facility. And I like flipped out, freaked out. I was having a nervous breakdown. This is my baby, you know, and I'm thinking he's there, and here he's over an hour and a half away. And they told me I had no rights, that they had him now. I had no right at all, that he was in their custody. I mean, it was just disgusting. And the people in these centers, you know, didn't even know it. And none of them were professionals. They were these young whatevers, you know, I don't even know what they are, you know, making a couple dollars an hour. And they, you know, the power trips that they had. And, you know, I heard horror stories from the kids. And like I said, my son would never, he was a 6'1" and big, you know, wrestler and lifted weights. And he would never, ever talk about anything, you know, nothing when it could ever hurt him. And it just totally destroyed it, ripped his heart right out.
pictures, some photos. Would you like to show those and talk about them?
Yeah, these are just a few. I have hundreds and hundreds. I have everything, but this I keep right on my desk for any kind of advocacy work that I'm doing. I like to look at it every day and just know that this is Judge Chivarella, showing the 28 years that he got. They were the front headlines of our local newspaper. His inmate number. He's out. He's far away from here. He's in Illinois. Like I said, he's appealed, and our chief public defender again, who there's just so many, there's so much wrong here. He's the one that defended Chivarella from the beginning and claimed there was no kids for cash, but he's the one that is in charge of the juvenile department he's our chief public defender, and he went and changed and made it better, so now there's oversight and all this. It's just such conflicts of interest, and he's been in national news because he has been in the paper that he has denied people come if they're indigent and will not give them counsel because he said they don't have enough help. They're way overworked and understaffed, and he's the chief public defender and all this, so he just turned people away. But he is defending Chivarella again. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I've been trying to get him out of there. I've gone to our new Home Rule Council board and the Ethic board, and they all agree, but he has so much now, behind him that they can't just, throw him out of there, and he's just a disgrace too. Our DA, who did absolutely nothing, Jackie Musto, her uncle, it was in with the, he was waiting to be sentenced now too, his trial for corruption. Miracle, who was the land developer of this whole, he was the big money-making part of this, made it all happen with his money. This whole county he owns, his signs are everywhere. He was supposed to testify at Musto's trial, which they keep putting back. He's not even competent to be held for trial yet. So Miracle just still hasn't been sentenced. I forget which avenue we were going there when I started talking about him.
That's all right. So he's been out for...
He hasn't. No.
On bond or whatever.
Yeah. He's the only one that has settled in this civil case, Miracle, and says he's doing it to just make good that he still, was never in the wrong, that, it was just a finder's fee. He never knew there was anything illegal going on. So the community thinks he's like this big hero around here, because and it's all just a slap in the face, it's...
He says it's a finder's fee when they get these briefcases of huge amounts of cash delivered to them.
Yeah, and they all hid, the money was all hidden, and taxes weren't paid on it, and it was all put in these separate accounts and all that, but it was all, yeah.
Have you spoken before the Pennsylvania legislature?
Yes. Yeah, I went with our Lisa Baker and Udicek, our state senators, and I went to Harrisburg and gave testimony, and they our Greenberg senator told me that Pennsylvania has one of the best juvenile systems in the area, and that in Pennsylvania, except for Luzerne County. All over they have such programs, and they have, for one, children are never ever ripped from their home, and unless they're a threat to society or a threat to themselves, but they're never taken from their home and incarcerated and ripped from school. all around, that they have really, really great juvenile programs, and they're seeing, but it was just right there in Luzerne County. It was these judges, just right here. But he told me he would make sure that this got to where it went and change would be made, and it has. It's passed Steve Corbett. I actually have the pen and all the paperwork that he signed, and put these, the bills into law.
Well, it's good they make those changes, but I have a feeling I'm going to meet quite a few people in Harrisburg, and I know I met a ton of them in Philadelphia, and I'll meet them in Pittsburgh, who have a slightly different issue than you, but they want to agree that the juvenile, at least the children and family, is a real crisis all over Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I hear, the family courts, I hear, or I talk to so many people about, that just contact me and they'll just call me, with their stories, and it's horrible. Lackawanna County, the family court system, just horrible, horror stories. It's just, and it's just the money, money is the means to, it's what's destroying our whole country, it's money, greed, and the power, and nobody cares what that's the bottom line. Nobody cares what it's devastating underneath.
But you made the comment about how far it goes back, this concept of immunity. Of course, when you go back and read the original case, it really didn't say what they've tried to say that it says. And it wasn't a case about whether or not a judge should get immunity or whatever. It was something, I can't remember what it was. It's been a while since I've read it. But it was just like, all right, I thought, here's the seminal case. This is the case that started it all, and it's going to be about a judge, and it wasn't. It was about some other kind of public official or whatever. And they said they could even be corrupt, or words to that effect, but I don't think corrupt meant the same thing back then.
No.
And they all have just fostered it because it's in their best interest.
And that's exactly what Chivarella, he would just use those, law lingo and change these words around and just made everything suit him, and he knew exactly what he was doing and knew exactly what to say,
So Larry Hohall has talked with you, and he's doing a book.
Yeah.
He is a wonderful person.
Yeah, he's doing a book on the whole Kids for Cash, like the legal aspects and stuff of it,
He's gotten involved with Robert Leone, so that's kind of sidetracked him in the book a little bit, but hopefully, he's gotten 400,000 hits on the video.
Yeah, and I was up here for his book signing that he did, and it was great, for the area and the publicity he got for it and everything, and but this area, every day we turn on the news and it's another one. They just don't get it, with everybody being watched and everything, and it just does not matter. They're just, and I know it's not just the area. I got calls from people outside of this country, across the country, and with the same things going on. Every state, just, horror stories. So it's not just here, but it's just, our mayor now, it's just unbelievable. It's one right after the other. Like I was saying before, our DA, Jackie Musto, that she was Senator Musto's niece, she was, the experience she had, prosecution and how many years she had, and, this whole area here is a big Democratic area. And she was just outed by a 28-year-old Republican right out of school, no prosecution experience at all. But people are just so tired of these same people, the same blood going in and running things that do absolutely nothing. And her whole, campaign was, this girl she doesn't know anything. That's what we need, fresh people to go in with, ethics and morals. And Jackie she didn't want to do anything because she was going to be, she's getting older, she'd be judge next. So she didn't do a thing. She didn't show up, she didn't walk. There was a joke over in the building where Chivarella was, because that was her, where her office was, that those people never saw her. She never stepped foot in that building.
I'd like to get a couple of sound bites that might not be that easy for you to say. But what I'd like to do is get just kind of a concise soundbite about, you just boil it all down into a sentence or two, what it was that happened.
Our president judge had the power to shut down the county detention center, and him, his friends, all the people that have money and pull in this city got together, built their own center that they would own. They would send, it was a juvenile detention center, and then he appointed his friend, lifelong friend, as juvenile judge, who would sentence every one of these kids, and they all went to these facilities. He had 2 facilities, one here and one out in western Pennsylvania. And the money that they were making, they were hiding into different accounts in their wives' names, all over, condos in Florida, and in made-up business names that never accounted, didn't pay taxes on any of this money and hid it all away, because this was why.
If we can, we'll put your son in that mix now. Why is your son gone?
Because his life was destroyed. He was 17 years old, and he was ripped from everything. I mean, his dream, he's a 17-year-old kid. Everything worked up to that year, and from some silly, little thing, everything he had was ripped from him. I mean, he's 17 years old. He wasn't home for Christmas. His wrestling career, his name, his everything. He just, whatever hell he endured in those facilities, he just, somehow he lost himself, and he just lost his sense of well-being, his sense of self, his sense of security. I mean, when your own family, you're ripped from he turns around and sees me crying and that I can't do anything. I mean, how does that make a 17-year-old feel? He's helpless, he is hopeless. And he just never recovered. He never recovered. He was never the same. He just couldn't get out from under.
How much money did Silverella and Conahan?
We know of 2-point-something million. That's what we know of.
What we know is that...
What we know of is 2-point-something million that they made. Chivarella now claims indigence. He has absolutely no money. The FBI from the beginning of this said that they were going to track, before he was sentenced, where all this money was going. His condo he gave to his daughter, his home he gave to his daughter. All this was supposed to be tracked and kept track of, and he's indigent. He's not even paying for his first offense, let alone his appeal now. We're paying for that too. He took everything from us, and I mean, it's just a slap in the face that we're going to even have to hear of this. I just wanted him gone and out of my life, I have it tattooed on my leg. Yeah. Ooh. Oh. This was I don't know if I could I take this off so you could,
yeah.
Or just hold it?
You actually pulled a little thing out of there.
This is Lady Justice, and I have Divine Justice. That's the date that Chivarella was sentenced, and that's my son's eyes looking down on the whole thing.
Very, very powerful.
All right, I refocused. So.
Very powerful.
Yeah, I believe he truly put me on the steps that day, and for all this to come out and bring the awareness and hope that something has to change for the better.
Yeah, I read in the paper that the judge said that the judge was biased.
Yeah, he was biased. There was conflict of interest. He owned this facility that he was sending kids to keep filled to make money, but he was biased.
Let me see the back of your shirt if I could. back down and, well, yeah, I still want to get the film going a little later. Yeah, let me just ask you a couple more questions.
These shirts, I had 100 of them made up for the sentencing, and they all went, I mean, within an hour. I probably could have had 500 of them made up, and they all went, and people wore them there. It was just like a cloud of white with my son's face there. So.
I'm actually shooting it now.
It really looks good on that lens.
Yeah, I've worn this a lot. It's kind of,
No, I'm talking about on the camera, it's showing up really.
Oh,
really
good.
you know?
All right, I got that really well, so we won't need you to stand up to do it.
okay.
It looks good, isn't it?
Good.
Did you guys have a question you want to ask?
I just had a comment about the immunity.
Mm-hmm.
That was that something like 17 to 23 judges, retired judges, and law professors wrote in amicus brief against giving them immunity. And Caputo just went, there's precedence is all for immunity. You know? And they bought the yacht and they call it Real Justice.
Yeah, that was-
REEL.
That was
Justice.
Powell's. Hmm.
Right in the face.
Yep.
You know?
And he got 18 months.
How did, what's your experience with the mainstream media? I saw you on CNN talking, but how does the media get involved with the state, the judicial system, and I mean,
I don't think they
the
have.
questions they ask you and how they frame it. Did you find any station or news thing more helpful than others, or did people distort what was?
No, I mean, for the most part, I mean, there were some, little parts that would get turned around a little bit but they all pretty much had the big picture, and they were all fairly good to me, and they got my story out. I mean, there was, there was sometimes, what my real message is ending this for-profit incarceration that, was that underlying cause of, that enabled these judges to go and do what they did so that they could make money. So that's my message, that's my true message, is what needs to be changed. So sometimes, they would give me an interview, but before I could really get my message, what I really wanted to say, it was done and over with, because they got, the drama part of what was really all they wanted,
Did you talk to Alex Jones or any other, quasi-media people?
Like who?
Alex Jones or Jesse Ventura?
No. I don't know, I didn't want to be brought into that whole thing, I was afraid they would twist and turn things, and I was too, everything was just too raw and too So I wanted to make sure that whoever I was around, that I felt comfortable around and that I could trust them.
I read a few weeks ago that incarcerations.
Yeah. I mean, we have the, we're first in incarceration rate, you know, population that's incarcerated, but fourth in population, overall population, you know, but first in imprisonment.
There's however, it's how cases are monetized. Once they go to court and they're bonded, they become monetized through J.P. Morgan. And this is a racket. And the first is about the federal, at the federal level. However, there is probably an equivalent at the county level as well.
There definitely is. With
Yeah.
child support, it goes into Chase Manhattan Bank, talking about the New World Order. Every order for child support, it's put into the bank, and interest is paid on that for the big banks, you know?
So each incarceration in charge is bonded and bundled, and these financiers, these banks. And here the taxpayers are feeding the prisoners. You see, that's another. We're
Yep.
in entire financial slavery.
There's ones that they have them out working.
They could pay them pennies a day because they're in prison, so
Out trying to make a living to pay their mortgage and all that, you know. I mean, and they're the ones making all this. It's just horrible. It's a vicious cycle, you know. But it's this country. I mean, it's $1 billion, you know, multi-billion dollars. Yeah, I mean, it's unimaginable. And so how could that ever end, you know?
Well, it ended in Iceland. They
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
the bankers in prison. They arrested the bankers.
What has to happen is that the books need to be balanced, they need to be reconciled. There's no way anybody or any person, meaning a corporate person, can pass a budget without first reconciling the books. And if you go to the Scranton Library, if you're into research, and go to the Scranton newspaper, Scranton Times of 36, 37. Anyway, April 19th, that one of those years, and you look in their financial section, you actually see that a fellow named Lamech, who was in Congress at the time, blasted the Federal Reserve of how money was created. And money was created just by bonding and then putting it to the Federal Reserve in order to monetize it. And all they paid for actually is the printing of that note. So in other words, right now, the cost of printing, when I started looking into it, was 2.5 cents. That was back in the early 90s. Now it's like 9 cents to print a bill of any denomination. So that means for every $10 of your labor, it costs the Federal Reserve 9 cents to print that bill that you have to pay $2 taxes on. You think you're getting $10, and in essence, you're indebted to the Federal Reserve, the owner of the Federal Reserve, $11.91. That's the way the system works. The books have got to be reconciled. That is the only way out of this mess.
And the Federal Reserve is a private enterprise. And in North Dakota, they have a state bank, and a woman, she's an attorney, Ellen Brown, says if all state banks were established, of course, they'd have to be run better than the government. There'd have to be accountability. But right now, we pay 40 cents on the dollar, every single dollar, for interest to this Federal Reserve, a private enterprise. That's why we're in the mess we're in. That's one of the explanations, but it's only it's very complicated, I know that. I understand a chunk of it, not the intricacies, because they make it for that like
Yeah, no,
convoluted
who could
reason.
understand it? Yeah.
But
All right,
40%.
let me ask a couple more questions and we'll let Sandy go on. Sandy, most people haven't heard this story, and I figure 99% of the people in America don't know that things like this and other things take place.
Yeah, I never would have imagined.
So what would you say, what can you say to try to get through to people who'll be watching this?
Just don't be naive. You know, you have to, you just have to know. I mean, you just have to, I mean, you can't trust. There's nobody that I feel like I could ever trust again, seriously. And I mean, it's a shame, but it's the way that you have to be. You really have to be hardened. And I mean, just be aware that, you know, I mean, there's evil people out there. People are not all good. You know, I really always thought people were good by heart, you know, especially the children. I mean, and they're not. You know, money means more than anything to a lot of people. Not to everybody, but to a lot of people.
And so before this happened, I kind of asked you this before, but before this happened, you had no idea that the courts could be a criminal operation.
No. No, I mean, I'm sure, you know, I'm not that naive. I know, you know, that there's corruption and, you know, there's wrong in everything that goes on, but never, ever imagine. I mean, the ties here run so deep. I mean, they have mafia ties that have gone back. I mean, that D'Elia, I don't know if you looked any of that up, but he's the one in prison here, you know, for all these ties that started this whole thing, that gave up the Chivarella and Conahan's name. That this is why the FBI finally started looking into it. But I mean, the ties just, and they said they, you know, it was so big that they stopped it right where they stopped it, and I feel like they did it just to get everybody to shut up, because if the whole big picture came out, I mean, the people above Chivarella, you know, they're the little ones down here, those ones, and where, you know, the whole bigger picture, it would be mass. I mean, what would it be? You know, it's just unimaginable. I can't really wrap my brain around it. I really can't, you know, and all I could do is keep, you know, speaking out and trying to make aware, and, you know, spreading the awareness and hoping that, you know, something positive could just keep, you know, like a chain reaction, and change has to, I mean, this whole country's going to be destroyed, and it all, you know, is because of power and money and greed. That's the bottom line. Nobody cares about anybody else. And this whole country's going to be destroyed because of that, unless something changes. And it's all each individual, you know, if each individual person would just do their part and do the right thing, you know, but it's just really, really sad. I mean, it just makes me, it's very, I mean, I'm pretty much just beat down and going day to day, just trying to understand why I'm still here and what my purpose is, because I don't have a child anymore. He was my only one. So why am I left here? For what reason? And just keep going every day and trying to find reason and meaning, and when really I feel there isn't, you know, unless something changes and something real. And I truly believe my son put me in that spot at that exact moment, at that exact right time, for that to explode, because I don't know, you know. I just believe it was, I don't remember even saying what I said. I was at work and flew there from work. I don't remember the drive there. I don't remember really standing there. It just, you know, I can't even watch that, you know, because it was just, it's, you know, I think a lot came out when that happened, and it, you know, I felt peace actually when I was walking away from there. A peace came over me.
You're talking about when you confronted somebody
Yeah,
outside the
yeah,
courthouse.
yeah.
So would you maybe say that again as a soundbite where you explain what, because you started talking about it, and you knew what you were talking about. I did, but I don't think that was well.
I was at work. I couldn't, I thought when this trial came out, I thought that I was going to be sitting there front row through the entire thing. And when the time came, I could not get myself to be there. I couldn't see his face. I couldn't hear his lies. I knew I couldn't sit there in that courtroom and listen to him. So I was at work, and I would, just following the news every day and waiting for the sentence, or I'm sorry, for the verdict. And I was at work, and everybody, my family, friends, all started calling me and texting me, that the verdict is in, and he's found guilty of this count, and he's found guilty of this count, and guilty of this. But it took all the time that it, and then they finally, and I'm a wreck, at work, and finally somebody sent me, called me and said that the court marshals are going to take him today into custody. And I flew out of work. They told me to go and go, and I flew up there by myself, drove. I don't remember driving. And all I wanted to see was him being taken out in cuffs and shackles and taken straight to prison. It was in February, but it was a beautiful sunny day, and all I kept thinking is, he's not going to see this day anymore. He's going to prison. And I got up there, and that's when I learned that they weren't taking him to prison. They were letting him go into his daughter's custody. So he was walking out of there free. And when he did come out for that press conference, it was his attorney, our chief public defender, Al Flora, that was like proclaiming, almost like a victory. They had this victory, and when he proclaimed there was no kids for cash, and I just lost it. But I believe that I was meant to be in that spot at that exact right moment for all this, yeah. And it was something bigger than me. I believe it was my son.
Well, I hope when they finally did take him to prison, it was your son's cuffs and shackles that they used on him.
Yeah.
It was in spirit, if not in
Right.
not literally.
Thanks.
Anything else you want to say?
I don't know. There's so much to say. I thank you for what you're doing. If more people could. I'm pretty sure you're Rob Johnson. Yeah. This man came in from Texas because there's a politician running for Senate in his state that was the appeals court attorney for Miracle, and he's running for Senate there and claiming that it was just a tax fraud. It was fraud to the IRS, not to the children. And so this is the type of person that's running for Senate. These are the type of people that are destroying our country, and we can't let, so he came all this way just to talk and hope to stop this guy from getting a seat in the Senate. And it's people like you, they're actually doing something and not just sitting there and keep taking it, and unless it affects them personally, nobody cares.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Unless it's affecting people personally, they tune out. But I do sense a change. I said that 6 years ago when I started trying to find, I thought I was the only one it ever happened to. And when I started looking online, I couldn't find very much. Now I've got over 5,000 websites. And every day I hear of dozens more that I didn't have on the list.
People are speaking up now. People are so tired of it, and they will not tolerate it anymore. All over our city, they're after the mayor, they're after every little thing, and it's the only way that anything can change. For our 28-year-old DA now to be in there with no experience, and it was that day I did everything in my power to help her get in there, and that was like one of the best moments of my life. Just when that happened, I thought that their real change is taking place. People are tired of this.
Walter, as the control, is he still in the control?
I think
office?
so, yeah.
Because he kicked big
Yeah.
there. So if they get any more people like him, or I
Yeah.
But they,
I mean,
I
it,
was, I
it's
got-
what we need is all, new people, and the people that are going to do the right thing that should be in there. And we're the ones that put these people in there,
Oh, yeah. That
or
was the
don't take
question
them out of
I
there.
was going to ask you earlier. The 1% controls everything,
Mm-hmm.
except at the ballot box.
Yeah.
If we could just somehow get that's the purpose of the movie, to try to educate people so that we could get the 99%, the nobodies, to rise
I think so
up.
many people are so beaten down, and they just feel like they don't even want to go to the polls because it just, it doesn't matter. And there's only these two that are running, and I don't like either of them, so I'm just not going to vote.
Yeah.
I mean,
And there's the voter fraud too,
Yeah, I mean, that's all.
I don't think your vote counts anyway. They can
One
just
of the people
push
that I'm
a few
interviewing
buttons.
in a later state was election poll, they were one of the workers. And she went in there with a plan to intentionally get a count on the number of people. And she was in some kind of supervisory role where she could do that. And then when the votes were announced, another 50% was announced as the vote.
Yeah, they picked the president at the Bilderberg group. That's
Yeah.
right.
But
But
not only that, the voting machines.
With this,
Yeah, the voting machines are a built-in way for them to do whatever they want,
Yeah.
sadly.
That's,
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we really have no.
but being that all law is contractual with this new voter ID law, where you have to have,
Mm-hmm.
something to show that you are. The latest thing here in Pennsylvania is that non-commercial driver's license, but in order to get it, you have to use you have to authorize that your social security number be used as identification.
Yeah.
So that already,
National ID.
that puts you under the venue of the Federal Reserve
Mhm.
System. So, and in Pennsylvania, I'm getting off on myself.
Are you a sovereign?
In Pennsylvania, well, I'm a sovereign with a small s, and I have a sovereign with a large s that I
Yeah.
have to account to,
Yeah,
okay? And, but the thing is that in Pennsylvania, Article 1, Section 11 says that, you should have all this, you could take the Commonwealth to court and all of this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Article 1, Section 12 says that laws can be suspended by the power, by the authority of the or by the power of the legislature, or its authority. Well, who the hell is the authority over the legislator that can suspend laws?
Thank you.
And why aren't they stopping them? I mean, that's right there on the Pennsylvania Constitution.
well, people could boycott something,
People
almost
could
anything.
occupy the streets, and NDAA will go into it.
Right, and then they'll declare martial law. But if everyone were to unify, even on some type of boycott, whatever it might be, or never pay, I have a friend, and I don't ever pay a dime in the court. I'm a former pauper, if I ever, whatever. But in other words, hit them where it hurts, the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But,
Follow
somewhere.
the money.
I mean, if people were unified and they just refused to support financially by or whatever, something that was in the mainstream, it doesn't take much. I mean, really, it could be almost anything, but just it has to be agreed upon, or it has to go around to where it grows, and then it hurts something, and then.
They tried doing that with, just don't buy gas for this one day, to get everybody to just don't fill your tank this one day.
Or if everybody refused to pay their income tax, you see. I mean,
Oh,
people
yeah,
that do,
yeah.
oh my gosh, it would.
Quiet on the set. All right, explain to me again about who it is that's running for senator.
Rob would, he would know, his name is Ted Cruz, and this is out in Texas, but he was Miracle's appeals of court attorney. He sent me his entire, transcript of the entire court action, that went down, and the big part is exactly what he said, that the real corruption, or the real victim, was the IRS. It was not the kids here.
So he's running for
Yeah.
Senate on completely bogus explanation of his involvement in what took place up here.
Mm.
I'm from Texas.
Mm.
I know a few people down there.
Yeah.
We need to spread the word.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely don't need, somebody like that. We need to, it's a total opposite people that we need to get in there, and especially, not somebody like him. So.
Well, I won't get elected this year to the House of Representatives, maybe next time around.
Yeah.
I won't travel
You're
around the country next time. I'll
Yeah,
probably
you're way too busy
Every single
this
one
time.
of them. Unless if 60 Minutes does a story about the movie, then I might get elected.
Yeah,
So,
that would be.
Watch them. You know what they did with this word sovereign, by the way? And there's so much more. But they took the term sovereign, it was a CBS maybe, and they did some kind of maybe 60-minute report, and they falsified it because what they did is they represented, quote, sovereigns like myself or Nikki or all these people really trying to effect change. They labeled them all with militias. They
Terrorists?
did, yeah, basically they did. I mean, and another thing, they have the State Justice Institute in Virginia that our taxes pay for, and they write books on how to defeat pro se, or they call it what, disgruntled litigants.
Yeah.
Are you, like you would be a disgruntled litigant, I would be.
Yes, I do.
Don't even come near me with such an asinine title. You look at my evidence and then tell me, But that's what this State Justice Institute, they call it. That's exactly what it does. It put out an anti-government handbook that supposedly people like me and others, are these terrorists